Welcome back to PR After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, bringing you your weekly cocktail of PR and marketing tips that will help you and your business. Hey, we'll get right to it after this message. Hello, listeners. It's me, Alex, from PR After Hours. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And I wanted to talk to you just for a moment about the way I get this show right into your earbuds every week. It's because I use Anchor FM. Now, I've told you previously that I've been podcasting since 2006, back when we used stone knives and bear skins and a couple of Dixie cups and string. Anchor FM has really streamlined this and made it simpler for people who don't know the first thing about setting up a podcast or don't have, time to learn all the pro tools and stuff, because it's all right here. First thing that's important to know is it's free. There are certain tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. That's huge. Distribution is a big pain in the butt, to be honest with you, so it's really great Anchor FM can do that for you, and you're not paying hosting fees. That adds up every month. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started, and be sure to join me in the virtual cocktail lounge on PR After Hours. It's probably not a shock to you that I think podcasting is a very essential part of growing your personal brand, growing your business, getting the word out, meeting new people, networking, all that stuff. Otherwise, why would I be doing a podcast? Why would I be podcasting since 2006 off and on, back when we used, Dixie cups with string and and maybe we used a telegraph actually instead of actually a podcast. But I find podcasting to be very useful, and I'm really excited to talk to somebody who I view as a new pioneer in getting good guests. What I love about this guest is he has done so much to advance quality of podcasts by connecting good podcasters with great guests. So that's why I'm really pleased to welcome James Mulvaney to the lounge. He is the founder of Matchmaker.fm. Welcome to the lounge, James.
How's it going, Alex?
It is going so very well. I meant what I said about that. I signed up for Matchmaker only a couple of weeks ago. And
really? Right.
Now I've been podcasting forever. I've had a different show since 06. This show that you're on was started in January. I have another show that's currently running since 2016. And I've got to tell you, after a while, it gets really difficult to find good guests. And part of the reason I found, James, is because it seems that a lot of the guests I reach out to aren't comfortable with the idea of being on a podcast.
Yeah.
So what you've done is you created a situation where it's like, we're all friends here. We're in this together. I want to be on a podcast. I'm not scared to be on a podcast. Yeah. So I'll take a step back and I'll quit being so effusive for a moment just to ask you, how did you start Matchmaker?
So I have a company called podcast.co, and we're a podcast hosting platform. We also have a full service agency. So it's a relatively new business. I also have another company which is in the radio space. So I've been involved in the audio broadcasting space for a long time. Interestingly, you said that you started, podcasting in 2006. I remember I recorded my first ever podcast in 2008. And the concept of actually downloading a file onto an iPod and taking it with you, it's just so strange now. But yeah, Matchmaker really came about because, it's pretty obvious that a lot of people, I think it's about 60% of podcasts are based on having guests on and interviewing people. We were looking for ways to drive traffic to podcast.co. And really, it just started as a funnel for the website. So we thought, okay, well, if people are looking for guests, then the chances are they might need podcast hosting. And a lot of people who are guests on podcasts end up then starting their own podcasts as well. So we set up two different landing pages, one focused on podcasters who are looking for really good guests, and one focused on guests who wanted to be featured on shows. And we had a couple of Google forms. So, you've heard the term minimum viable product. Well, this was like the lowest possible form of MVP. And just a Google form saying, please tell us about yourself. What sort of shows do you want to get booked on? What's your areas of expertise? And, we're seeing people submitting these forms and actually filling them out to some detail. But we actually had no way of connecting these people together. It was kind of like a false promise in a sense. And we just really wanted to use it to grow our marketing list. But we then thought, well, hang on, maybe we're actually onto something here. Wouldn't it be great if there was a place where, we could build a platform, build a community to connect these two groups of people together? And what's really great about Matchmaker is, we only launched it in February this year, and we're just about to hit 5,000 users. So the growth has been absolutely amazing. It's been incredibly fast, and the most rewarding thing for me as an entrepreneur is actually hearing from people like you who have actually made lots of valuable connections, which can be sometimes just a podcast interview, sure, but then sometimes those connections can lead on to other things, new clients, new business, etc. And so I just think and there's so much more we can do with it as well. I think it's a really, really promising and interesting product to have as part of like my repertoire as an entrepreneur.
I sincerely want to thank you for this product because I'll tell you this too. The sign up process was so simple. I found it so easy. Now, of course, I had a lot of stuff ready to go. I already knew about my bio. I knew how to explain my show. I knew how to position myself as a guest as well. I signed up for both. Now, nobody's calling me to be a guest, but that's okay. They probably know I talk too much. That's probably why. But I think that the platform is so easy to use. And what has really been interesting to me is it's not just the guests themselves, but perhaps their publicist or their agents seem to be using this a lot. Is that something you're finding as well?
Yeah, that's a common trait. I think a lot of agencies out there which manage influencers or business people, and they will try and find them opportunities. One of the features that we'll be adding in the sort of it's not on the roadmap immediately, but it's probably going to happen later in the year, is like an agency feature. So you can basically create multiple profiles and work on behalf of your clients to manage them, because it seems to be, a common thing.
I would like to encourage you to do so. I'm obviously a PR person for this.
Yes.
That's what I do for a living. And most of our listeners are involved in PR. And I can tell you that a lot of us have a stable of clients that we would love if we could just manage that portfolio in one spot.
Yep.
And I think you could even monetize that. I mean, I think agencies should be willing to pay a little bit for that.
Yeah, that's part of the plan. Obviously it's a free platform at the moment. We wanted to make it free to sort of grow the community, and we always intend on having a free plan. I think the model will be a freemium, so we'll have various features which you can pay for. Obviously we'll have a monthly fee for agencies that wish to use it based on the number of people they manage or something like that. But I think it's the main thing to begin with was just focusing on quality. We wanted to make sure that it's a closed ecosystem, so you can't just kind of go in and browse guests. You have to be signed up to do so, and that ensures therefore people are actually spending time completing their profile, and it's just making sure that we're reaching out to the right people. So to begin with, it's just been focusing on making sure we get really good quality guests, people who've got interesting stories to tell or great experience in certain areas and industries, and also just finding podcasters who have got great looking shows.
And that's exactly what you're finding there. I just to step back again on my own experience with it. Again, I signed up less than a month ago, and I've already had well over a dozen guests or reach out to me, that their publicists or the guests, quality guests too. That is the thing too. These are not necessarily, and I don't want to knock anybody, but you want guests who really do have a story, that they really do have some expertise. And I find that anybody who's asked me so far, it's very easy to click on their profile and vet them that way. And even if that wasn't enough, at least I could go from there and get enough to maybe Google and make sure. I'm not saying anybody's out trying to pull anything, but you want to make sure that the guests are people that will be appealing and that they have some experience in talking about what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes for better conversations, doesn't it? The more interesting people, the more people who've been exposed to different journeys, whether that's business or other things, personal development, they make for great stories, and you can learn a lot from people. And ultimately, that's the idea of a podcast, I think, is you've got to think about what your audience want. I think podcasting is specifically a tool to educate and inform and entertain and delight your audience. So, you can control your story very easily by having on different guests, and you can I think what's great about Matchmaker is, if you want to go and find someone who's an expert in, LinkedIn, for example, or you want to find someone who's an expert in, search engine optimization, you can do that quite easily. There's plenty of people who have got, different areas of expertise, rather than just saying marketing as a whole or PR as a whole.
I think so too. Well, let's talk a little bit, and you just kind of opened that up, but let's talk a little bit why, if there's people who are consuming this show, obviously listening to the show, but why might they want to consider, let's just take it from the angle of why would you think that most people might, or not most, but some people should consider having a podcast? I mean, I don't think everybody should. And there's plenty of evidence that some people shouldn't, just by the quality of the show or the kind of, there's a lot of drift, I think, in some of these shows.
Yes.
There's nothing worse than the first minute of a show when it's two guys going, how are you doing today? I'm all right. How are you? I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah.
I turn that off right away. But so what are your thoughts? Who should do a podcast and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think let's talk about specifically, why should a business do a podcast? I think podcasting is an extension of, or should be seen as an extension of your existing marketing strategy. One of the main benefits of podcasting is you have people's attention for a long time. When you compare it to like what the average watch time of a YouTube video or a Facebook video, people are more engaged, they listen for longer. So, as a marketer or a business owner, that's really powerful because you can get a lot of information into, say, 20 minutes, and that you would otherwise maybe not have that viewer or listener's attention, on a video. So I think that's one of the benefits. I think also, it is a great way to push your business, your product in front of other audiences, particularly if you use this model where you're having guests on, because ultimately when the podcast goes live, it's good etiquette. And generally speaking, most guests will then share it with their audiences. So it's another way to promote your business to a wider audience who perhaps weren't aware of you previously. I think, it's great to educate your audience as well. You can provide a lot of value by having a podcast and making it something that's themed around, what your company offers. And we've seen all sorts of stuff, right down to like one of the weirdest, most obscure podcasts I've seen. We've got one on batteries, okay, and then one on like a film that you can apply to windows, like to reflect the sunlight. I don't know what it's called, but like literally these two specific podcasts I've seen. For people who are in those industries, I was like, wow, this is really weird. But, fair enough. There's an audience for everyone, right?
Right. I love that. And that leads me to another question. I've had some folks talk to me to help me, for me and my agency, to help them get a podcast off the ground.
Yeah.
And we've done that a few times. And of course, as you well know, working with clients, setting expectations is everything, right? But I've had clients who just so excited to do it, hear their voice being recorded and pushed out, that they don't understand necessarily that you're not going to necessarily be Joe Rogan the next day.
Exactly.
But when you're talking about all these niche podcasts, I'm really quick to say, look, just try to win in your niche. Okay. Mm-hmm. Don't feel like you have to be, the biggest podcaster ever. Do you find that that's an issue that you're dealing with your clientele and people you're working with is managing those expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's it's interesting because we have podcasts that are really specific, and they obviously have maybe a few hundred downloads per episode, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And then we've got clients who, for example, we work with a sports brand. They promote boxing and cover boxing matches and things, and they get thousands and thousands of downloads each episode. So it's a real broad spectrum. I'd say if you're doing it for your business, you want to focus on having a good quality audience. You want to know that every person listening to that podcast could potentially be a customer, or they are a customer, or they're relevant to whatever it is you're trying to achieve. I think that's the core thing. I always say to anyone, when you're starting a podcast, like, why are you doing it? Don't just sort of start, like you said before, chatting. I think gone are the days when podcasts are just two blokes down the pub chatting and sort of like just making up as they go along. I think you really need to be strategic about, why you're doing a podcast, what the objective is, how are you going to measure KPIs? Is it to drive new customers, or is it to educate your existing customers and build a relationship with them? There's so many questions, and I think you need to try and answer those questions before you actually get into it. And that will make for a better quality product ultimately.
What's your take on having intro, outro music, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I think sometimes you listen to a podcast and there's like a 3-minute intro or whatever, and it can be a bit, sometimes you just end up fast forwarding or skipping it. I think, having a solid brand, having a format that you can follow for each episode. I think consistency is one of the big parts of podcasting, so if listeners know what to expect, make sure your episodes are of same or very similar length. Try and be respective of people's time ultimately as well. Like some podcasts will end up going off for like 2 hours. I think 20 minutes to 30 minutes is kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah. There's a show, I won't name it. I love it. I was there from the beginning, and they've become very successful in their niche, and they have no problem going over 2 hours per episode. But they are a little defensive. They're like, if you don't want to listen to it, we understand, but they have a very rabid, loyal niche following. They probably, I think they did over in 2 years, they did almost, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school, almost 1 million downloads. So they're obviously doing something right, but
you listen for the full 2 hours then?
I did it first, but I got to say, and I love these guys, and I hope they're not listening because they'll be offended, but I kind of have to stop because it's just it's too much.
It's too much time.
It's like watching a movie every time it comes out. I don't have time to
Mm.
watch a 2-hour movie, let alone listen to a podcast and give it any real attention. That's why this show here in the virtual lounge, I like to keep them around 20 minutes for interviews. And then when I just do quick tips and information, I try to keep those 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because what I've found in this case is that my listeners are business people, entrepreneurs, PR people, marketing people. They don't have time.
Yeah.
They want to hear, get in and get out. Now, I have another show, Mysterious Goings On, which is also on Matchmaker. Thank you. Just interviewed a great guy that just got posted today, Nir Bashan, through you. Thank you. That show is always about 40 to 45 minutes, maybe 50 if it's a really juicy interview. And that one seems to be doing just fine, too. That's the one I've had since 2016. So I think it's like you said, identify what your format's going to be and stick to it.
Absolutely. And I think you made a really interesting point of saying 5 to 10 minute like episodes, quick tips. That format can work really well. Especially if it's just you presenting ideas, just cut to the point and just try and make it actionable and try and make it quick. And some of the podcasts that I listen to, I love there's a podcast called Your Next Million by a guy called Frank Kern, and I followed him for years. He's a marketer, and some of his episodes are just very casual. It's just like he just sort of will record himself, like it's almost like his inner dialogue, but it's just like 5, 10, 20 minutes sometimes, but most of them are like 5 to 10 minutes. And, you can just sort of listen to them while you might be walking to the shop, for example, and you can learn something just in that kind of 5, 10 minute period. Obviously a lot of people listen to podcasts while they're doing activities such as commuting to work, on public transport, or in the gym, or maybe doing cooking or whatever. So, think about those kind of activities. Normally, some people are unfortunate and have an hour-long commute to work, but most people's commute might be like half an hour. So that's why I think that format really works.
James, really quick, I know we're going to run out of time here, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think COVID's done to podcast listening habits? You mentioned commutes. Well, a lot of people don't have a commute right now.
Yeah. Interestingly, on the radio side of things, we've seen a tremendous increase in traffic across our client stations. And I think that's because people like the idea that, there's someone on the other end. It's that kind of live thing that, you're listening to the radio in the background. Interestingly, with podcasts, it's kind of stayed about the same. We haven't really seen a big increase, and we haven't really seen a decrease. And I think that's quite consistent across the board. But, bizarrely, as I say, radio is really, really popular. We're seeing like 3 times the amount of traffic that we saw at the start of the year.
I take a lot of hikes now, about 5-6 mile hikes, and podcasts are my constant companion. But you know what? There's a point, though, I started realizing that I needed to hear, just like you said, I needed something live. I need to be part of something that everybody's listening to at once.
Yeah.
And so I started going back to radio a little bit more. I hardly drive anymore. We're still kind of in lockdown where I live, mostly voluntarily, but that's because I like to live. So, so I'm listening to radio more. I appreciate that. Well, let's get back to, as we wrap up here with Matchmaker, let's just kind of alleviate any objections or fears about checking it out. I mean, it's so simple, right? What do you tell people when they're like, I don't know if that's for me?
Well, we just describe it like it's Tinder for podcasters, So it's really simple to sign up. It's free. You just can connect using your LinkedIn, Facebook, or Google account. You create a profile. It might take you 5-10 minutes to finish it, and then it's just about being proactive. Reach out to people, like start sending messages. But everyone on the platform has a single goal and single vision in mind, where they either want to become guests on podcasts or they want looking for guests to be on their podcast. So that's the thing. I think being proactive, and also what I say is, try and customize your introduction message. When you're writing a pitch to be on someone's show, try and show them in advance what value you could deliver or potentially what topics you could talk about. I think that's a kind of key way to win people over straight away.
You did that with us, if you don't mind me saying.
Yes, no, go for it.
You recorded, what, 1.5 minute length videos about 3 topics, I believe, and they were aimed at shows like mine or shows that are more business or another topic. And I love that, because you just got a hold of me and said, okay, look, I can do this on Zoom. These are things I can talk about. Let's schedule it. Here's my schedule link. Go. I mean, it was the easiest booking I've ever had, except for maybe, my mother. No, I'm kidding. She's never been on the show, but she would be more difficult. I know that. So it's really simple. So I love that idea, but you don't even have to go that far if you don't want to do a video. But I love what you're saying. Just some bullet points of, I can talk to you very intelligently about this, this, and this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually adding video right into the platform as well, so you can record like a video profile, and I think we're going to add it into the messaging feature. So that's coming up soon as well. Which again, I think it's just going to add that another layer of engagement between podcasters and guests, which I think will be awesome, basically.
James, I'm telling you, I hate to admit this, but it's worth it. When you say it's time to start paying for this stuff, I'm going to start paying for it.
Yeah.
It's indispensable, buddy. You've done a fantastic job. Kudos. Cheers to you on this, my friend. Any last thoughts before we close the lounge?
I mean, just like if you're thinking about getting into podcasting, sometimes just appearing as a guest on other people's podcasts is a great way to start. You know, you can kind of practice your communication skills and you can meet some interesting people. So just give it a go.
I love it. All right. James Mulvaney is the founder of radio.co, podcast.co, and of course, as we discussed, matchmaker.fm. He has described it as Tinder for podcasters. Yep. And it's probably almost as fun, but it's a great platform. I'm telling you, if you're a podcaster or you want to be a podcaster, get in on it. If you want to be a guest and position yourself or your clients, PR people, this is the place to go. Again, matchmaker.fm. Oh, you know what that means? Looks like it's last call here at your virtual lounge for PR news, views, and interviews. Don't forget, you can ask me a question anytime. You can do it through our Twitter account, which is @HoursPR. Or, even better, you can send me a message vocally. I would love to hear your voice, and I'll answer it on the show. There's a link in the show notes. All you have to do is sign up through Anchor FM. It's free, doesn't take long. And you record your message, I get the message, I will play your audio, just give me your first name and the city you live in, and then I will answer the question to the best of my ability right here on the show. Don't forget to, if you're enjoying this podcast, you can support it and help increase the frequency and value of the show. Just consider being a sponsor for your brand or your agency or just yourself because you're like, I like this show. Or just drop a few coins in the virtual tip jar. Either way, there's links in the show notes. Please check that out. All of that, of course, being in the show notes where you're listening right now or at prafterhours.com. I see that they're turning up the lights. Last call is over, and I've got to clean up this virtual lounge. And until next time, I'm Alex Greenwood, and you've been listening to PR After Hours on Anchor FM.